I went and took some photos of 3 different layouts, Matt Keiser's, John's, and Dick Freilic's, and got copies of all our documentation. And the point of all this is just to show you the different ways that people do it. Bruce, thank you, Bruce, for your presentation. You really explained operations in general, the whole thing. And we're going to concentrate more on just how these guys do things a little differently. So let's start with Matt's layout. And it helps if you can see this, so I should stand back here. Matt has, and correct me if I'm wrong here, N-scale, CSX modern era, single level, no fast clock, dispatcher without radios or telephones. So basically, Matt's giving orders to everybody. I just put down manually controlled switches. So this is all manual turnouts and that type of thing. Operations method, he has train lists of the whole list of all his trains. Then he has train cards, which describe the movement. And then he uses car cards. And his car cards are a little different than Bruce's car cards. So you'll see that. They're not as old. They're definitely, they're only, at least 20 years younger. So I took some photos, pardon my poor photography at times. So it's coming from the south. Matt's layout starts in Rocky Mount, North Carolina.
Can you do this for you?
Sure.
You want to do this?
You can talk because you know it better than I do, and I will flip for you.
I listen to this guy. No way.
All right, so this is a staging yard. This is where most of the trains are made up, and
Yeah, so it's a 14-foot staging yard. It represents both the north and the south terminus of the local railroad. So Rocky Mount, North Carolina, and Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, which is the northern part. Because it's the RF&P division of CSX. So it goes basically between Richmond and Philly. Richmond, the RFP actually goes to Baltimore, but Philly staging. So, but I'm able to operate this yard now as not just a staging yard. I actually operate as a classification yard. A train will come in, we'll break it down, and we'll set up a new train and go back out. So it automatically restages, but it's also it's been used as basically a classification yard.
Okay, so in the rest we got next we go to South Richmond, which is a industrial switching area. That's a fun job to have.
Yeah, that's the kind of the example of a switching puzzle. I made it up so it's a switching puzzle, so people have a real challenge when you get in there.
Richmond.
This is the Richmond yard. So mine, there's 2 scenic yards. One is Baltimore. This is Richmond. Richmond is a little smaller yard, but there's industries off to one side, off to the right on this picture, and then there's a side job that is done.
So this is my name. This is the area of the country.
Yeah, that's just it's a corner scene. I call it the farm scene. It's just a corner layout. Unfortunately, if you look at it from the top, it kind of looks like a spaghetti bowl, which is kind of what you get in some of the things. This is what we call Cedar Fork. This is the major mine in the layout. It loads cars, and a unit coal train, a 20-car coal train comes in and leaves from here. That's the second mine. It's called Mine Run. That's a little smaller. This is a town called Fredericksburg. Again, it's modeled, all the towns are actual names of towns in Virginia, but they are not the track plan. There was no effort to make the track schematic anywhere near anything close to what the original is. This is a nice little local job that comes out of the Baltimore yard and then comes and does some switching. This is the Baltimore yard, which sometimes gets quite congested, but that's the major yard on the layout that gets to be in a position to be worked.
Main line is the first track.
First track.
Yep.
So on my layout, the tracks are numbered from the edge almost always. Not the main line is the one right next to the edge of the layout, which is track 1, and then I just track. So for people to know, it's 1, 2, 3, 4. The tracks in every one of the areas, the tracks are basically called out by the number 1, 2, 3, 4. Up to this one has 11. That's part of the engine facility in Baltimore. And that's the town of Baltimore. So that would be Baltimore Station or the Union Station in Baltimore. Because I do run an Amtrak train where the Amtrak trains will stop and go in there. That's a coal facility in Newport, I mean, in Baltimore. Curtis Point, which is actually modeled, the name is the same as one and actually in Baltimore, which we export coal. Another view of Baltimore. That's the port area, which is a switching job. It brings cars from over on the left side of the picture. Actually, left side of the picture, you'll bring cars in and you'll swap out cars. So it's a job. It's kind of a stationary job in the layout. This is
hard to read. Sorry.
Yeah, that's a list of the trains that I run. Again, I don't run any particular schedule. What we do is I basically look to see if the yard is congested, the yard guy is congested, or where a body can go, and we'll run a train that'll support, that, so the yards don't get overly congested, or that there's enough room to put a body in it to go do it. So no particular schedule. It kind of works out kind of similar, but that's a list of kind of trains I can pick off what we want to go run, and not all of them will run. So this is an example of a couple different train orders. It came out a little bit different. So each one of those is really just a portion of a 3x5, 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper. So each one of those be different. So the top will be like the M410, which is a northbound freight. So it leaves Rocky Mount, which is staging, departs north. What it does in Richmond, what it does in Cedar Fork, and what it does in Baltimore. So a lot of the trains will make an intermediate stop in Cedar Fork and drop off some cars and pick them up. And they'll go to Richmond and they'll go to Baltimore to do major work. Intermodal is a little easier. There's just another one. I do run a couple of passenger trains. P152, 153 is a VRE, which will come out of staging, make stops and all the layout, go up and stop in Baltimore, wait in Baltimore for 1 minute, and then head back.
So we got a couple pages of these. So.
Yep. So they're just examples of different trains that I run. All right. So the meat and potato, what Glenn wanted to talk about was car cards. So, and I'm going to give some background on how I got here so we can kind of get there, because we kind of talked about that. So on the car cards, I first started out with switch lists, but it ended up being a lot of work for me between sessions, because I was writing up these switch lists between sessions. So, and I'm like, how can I want to make it easier for myself. And then another thing that I didn't like about switch lists was if I made up ahead of time, then once a train was pulled from a location and went to another location, what happens to it then? It was kind of in limbo. There was no direction. So then I looked at, next thing I did was so I started with a switch list. I knew some operators, most of the guys that operate on my layout, they don't really want to fill out paperwork. They don't want to fill out a switch list in the yard. They don't want to have to write stuff down. So I kind of got away from that. It didn't really work for a continuous flow. So I went to a kind of a continuous system, which John will talk about, a little bit different. He has switch lists, but it's kind of a little modified. Now, one thing that you'll notice in N scale people say the numbers in the cars are hard to read. So if you got a center beam flat car, CSX box card is not too bad. You can read them pretty good. But if you got a center beam, a depressed center flat car, good luck reading that number. Yeah. So we don't go by numbers. We just go by a box car. It's B&M and it's blue, just to kind of give this stuff. When I looked at the system that Bruce uses, which I've used on many different layouts, and we run them. In the beginning, I was kind of naive that I thought that you only could have a car go to basically 4 spots because you got the 4 system waybill. Now, Dave showed me how he does a little bit different. Is he's got he can pull that one waybill out and he can put another one in there, so the same car doesn't go to the same location every 4 times. It kind of distracted me from that. I didn't want it to go to the same place every time. I like variety. Turning the waybills, different layout owners do it different ways. Some have you turn it, like Bruce does when you put the car in there, you turn it. Some don't have you turn it. They turn it after session. So it's ambiguity there. The typical waybills, a lot of them, the new ones from the micro trains, Micromark, they have a via line, which you can kind of use. And some people, but a lot of people, including me sometimes, don't understand what that means. and it kind of screws us up on where the train's going. So I kind of tried to get through all that, and I designed these little cards, and I didn't invent this system. In fact, it was talked about in a couple model railroader magazines. And is it Bob Allen, right?
Bob Allen and Chandler Cobb, I think, started that thing
So-
with the excellent.
So some of them have a little bigger. So what I have is each car, and each card has a different color. So the first one's a box that's white. Blue is they're reefers. Green is a hopper. Yellow is the gondola. I have a pink one for tank cars, and the brown one are coal cars or coal hoppers. Now, to try and make it easier for inexperienced operators, I sent so a mainline guy. It's going to tell him which yard to go to. So a car that goes to Woodbridge, which is the second one down, Wood Allen's, if you look on there, that car goes out of staging or goes from someplace, will end up in the Baltimore yard and then go. Now, I could have just put Wood Allen on there and leave it at that. But what that did was an inexperienced operator then would have to know that a Wood Allen car has to first go to the Baltimore yard to get put on the local. So every stop a car has on it, I put on the card, kind of to give a flow of where it goes. And I try, and sometimes I had to play around with it to get it so that on the 10 slots that are on there, the car would end up so it could just keep on rotating. So I want the car just keep on going. You can see in the yellow card, I have an empty space because it didn't really work out. Once he got to Philadelphia North State, which is staging it to go back to Baldwin, I didn't have a place to send it. So it works out. It works out how to go do it. Now, one of the systems people use with this is to use a paper clip to slide it down to where the car goes. But I found that a paper clip moves, and it just wasn't.
Especially on every card in a bundle, they would get all wrecked.
Exactly. So once we're every card in a bundle, it just wasn't working. So now some people use an X system. I didn't think that you would X it when you spot it, and then you put the other half of the X when you pull it. I didn't find a need for that. I didn't really have a use for that, so we just check it off.
So are these one-time use cards?
These are not one-time use cards. So the negative to these cards is you have to erase them. We use pencil, but you have to erase them. So that's a negative to it. Now I try to set it up that mostly that when they finish at the bottom, they're in the staging yard, and I typically do the staging yard so I can do the erasing. Because I use a white eraser and not a typical pencil eraser, because every one time we try to use a pencil eraser, it leaves these red they're dried out, and it leaves this looks like crap.
So each of these cards probably takes you through 3 or more sessions.
You typically, definitely you can go at least 4 sessions. There's 10 spots on it, but probably 4 to 5 sessions per card. At least. And I'd say some go a lot longer. Convenient. One of the things for the size of the cards is I wanted it small enough, and we were talking about this earlier, to lean against an N scale car and be able to stand up but not knock over. Because I don't mind when people take the cards and put in, and if that helps them, whatever helps them, and lean it against the N scale car. Okay, it's no big deal. So I made them small enough to go do that, small enough they can carry it around. I typically on a trains will put them on bundle them up with a binder clip, so 20 of them. I've started using what we call block. We call it block
Divider card or a block card.
A block divider card that would say like Baltimore on it, and then another one that would say Richmond, because I still have operators that can't figure out where the car goes, and they need all the help they can get to get it into the this yard or that yard. They get the cards and they're lost.
Well, it just speeds it up. If the top block goes to Baltimore and then 5 cards back, says Richmond, and all those cards between that and the next card go to Richmond. And it really makes it easy.
So Matt, speaking of your yard, your Baltimore yard looked large, and the number of tracks, how do you number the tracks 1 through 10, 12?
So it's funny you should say that. So on the piece of paper by the wall, it's got track 1, and I did it so that on the bottom of the papers, because they go from track 1 is the main, track 2 is a passing, and the tracks all the way up to 10 are designated for destinations. So track 4 would be all the cars that are going to the port or go on track 4. On 5, they're going to Woodbridge. They're going to be in the Woodbridge or Fredericksburg switcher. 6 northbound, 7 southbound, Newport News, 8, whatever.
But you don't have a little sign down there saying track 4.
So just last night, I did that.
Really?
So, because even me, I know what the tracks are. I'm still counting each one. So, and I'm not sure I like this. I mean, it's a way of doing it. I printed out some, numbers and I put them down on the ties. I guarantee you they're probably not gonna last 2 operating sessions because I didn't like super glue them down. But yes, we're gonna see how that goes, to see if that helps.
I'll let you know.
You let me know, I don't know if you do that on yours.
I put a little piece of paper on a brass pin and stuck it in next to it just to help me out,
Now you do that next to the switch or do you, the turnout, or you do that?
next to turnout.
So it's the turnout.
Yeah, that's where you have to think. So.
Yeah.
And that's where you want to be.
Because that's what I thought. I thought originally that, and I still might do it, is put them on some kind of sign that kind of looks prototypical versus the little sticky sitting on the track.
Right.
Yeah, so,
Near the turnout.
but you do it near the turnout.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I've seen that on some, that it's neat near the turnout versus the track. But then I have a ladder, it's a compound ladder, so you have a switch that goes to 5, 6, and then another switch over here it decides between 5 and 6. So now you gotta put one at 5, 6, and then one at 5, 6, so I don't know.
Yeah,
So
figured it.
you don't use the car cards for unit trains, right?
So currently I don't use car cards for unit trains, correct?
Are you gonna go to that?
I don't know. I haven't decided whether I need them. Right now, for example, all intermodal trains, when they go out of Baltimore, they all head south. So if I want to eventually make intermodals go north and south out of there, then I would think I would need car cards or something to tell the yard crew that this car is going south or north. But I don't.
But I asked that because I noticed, you have a coal hopper card. And typically that's a unit train.
Correct. So the coal cars, so there's a unit train that comes out of my Cedar Fork mine, then goes to the pier, which sends it off in Baltimore. But there's also other coal cars that'll go to either another mine or go to a power plant that's in South Richmond. So for cars that aren't in that unit train, I have put together coal cars. So you kind of have to be flexible. That's the whole idea, is to be flexible. Nothing's ever, even though Bruce has been using his for 25 years.
How much?
I don't know.
Double it.
30.
There's always, I always find things that, you make changes, make improvements or whatever to go through things. Let's see, how was I doing? See, traction number, that was good. So dispatching for me, you can tell my voice, dispatching for me is verbal. I found the room is small enough. Now I understand this track schematic thing, and I was trying to figure out how to do a kind of a dispatcher track schematic, because I find that in my room, there's a landing where my stairs come down. And I'll tell you, if I'm standing up there looking down over my railroad, which Bruce wouldn't like because I'm getting the visual, you get a really good view to see out where trains are going to have to meet, because sometimes you get to orchestrate meets, and that's the fun part, I think, is when trains have to meet and you have to figure out how to go do it. But I don't have a dispatcher board. Well, I may get one eventually, but I'm not there right now. We talked about no set schedule. Trains run when they run, because John will tell you, sometimes he does the Baltimore yard. He's done it plenty of times. And sometimes it gets overwhelming if he got a north and a southbound freight in at the same time, that'd be like impossible. He just wouldn't be, because I like to keep people moving. That's one of the things I like to do on my layout, is I don't like to go to someone's layout and not operate. I don't like to
slave driver.
I'm a slave driver, but I don't like to sit back. I'm there to run trains, right? That's what you're there to go do, is to run and operate trains. And if you're sitting in the crew lounge the whole time, to me, that's not fun. It's social, it's good, but I'm here to run trains. Okay. Tom.
Do you have an opinion on why you moved from switch list? What made you move from switch list to car card? Is it the size of your railroad, the number of spurs, the number of industries, the number of cars? What is it that makes you move from small to large?
So what made me move from switch list is, one, I wanted my layout and is to be almost continual. You wanted to be able to stop anywhere you want and pick up wherever it is and not have to be ready to go. And switch list, And switchless, like I said, I was doing all the work, which is fine. It's my layout. I understand that, but I was said, okay, how can I not have to do this? And that was the one issue. And the other issue was when switchless only covered really one movement of the car. So then if you get, and we'll talk about it when we get the Dick Freilich's layout. So when train cars come into the yard, then once you put them into a train, someone's got to fill out a switch list in the yard in real time while you're there to send it to the next place. And if you have a 20-car train, that's a lot to fill out. If you have that big a train. So that's what drove me out of a switch list.
I'll make a comment on.
Yep.
You've seen this written in model press now too. In experience, switch lists really shine when you're doing local work. They fall flat on their faces if you're doing BOME on our Valley Junction. It's absolutely useless for that. So I think what the ideal situation, if you have an interest in doing switch lists where you're doing local industries, is a hybrid system where you're talking unit trains with one piece of paper that tells you it's a unit train, it's got 50 cars in it, it's going from A to B. But if you got a local with 10 cars and you're going to switch out Smith and Company, then a switch list is a really nice tool to use.
Yeah, I would agree. Let's see, operations. What else we got? I run a good variety of trains. We run a couple locals. And again, so when it comes to operations, and if you want to do operations in layout, and Bruce and I were talking about this a little bit, you really got to look at your operator and figure out what your operator capable of. Okay, because some guys really, some love the challenge of the switching puzzle and how to do all that and get all into it, and they can do that. And some, that's not their thing. Some guys want to run the passenger train. That's all they want to run. They want to make the stops and keep going, or run the mainline freight. They don't want to get into switching. They don't want to get uncoupling or coupling. They just want to run it. So you really got to look at your operator and know, and they won't always tell you. Sometimes you have to deduce it yourself. They won't always tell you what they want, what they can do or can't do. So you kind of have to figure out how experienced they are and really assign them a task that's within their capabilities, because you want them to have fun. The whole idea is to have fun. I don't want a guy there that's totally frustrated and can't figure out how to make, do this switching puzzle and it's really not having fun, because the whole idea really is to have fun. Other questions? It was a good time. I'll put that.
Anything else from there?
Yep.
Like the only thing I've looked at is I have those sheets of yours up,
Yeah. So, and it was kind of fun to fill these cards out, because what I did is I made a list of all my locations of all the places that I would spot a car. And I filled out all the, I basically filled a card out and checked off that I got to them, and I went through the whole thing. But not all cars, none of my operating sessions are ever the same, because none of the cars go the same place, and they're not all cycled at one operating session. They're all going to move. They may not all move. Some may be still in staging, because I may have too many cars to go to one location. So I just keep it in the yard, the staging yard, or it may have stayed in Baltimore, the yard. So they're all different. It's a variety. And that's one of the real things I'm always looking for is variety. I don't want to do the same thing over and over and over again. So that's one of the things. I like that variety.
So the trade-off this is for both of you. Trade-off is you create car cards, which keep things. Yeah, that's the thing. How long did it take to do all the car cards?
It really didn't take long. It didn't take, this is on a computer. What I did is I basically made it out on an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper, laid them all out and put them, just went in and just picked locations. They don't have to be exact locations, and I modified them and then I started off putting them on 3x5 cards glued. That doesn't work. This is card stock, which seems to work pretty good. It's firm enough that it doesn't get worn. These train instructions need to either get laminated like Bruce did, or get on card stock, so there's something to them, because these just get abused, but it happens. It didn't really take that long.
Okay.
So I did it all on the computer, nothing by hand, because you wouldn't be able to read my handwriting.
Anything else? Okay, on to the next one.
Are we still on Zoom?
I believe so. Tage, are we still zooming? Hey, Tage?
Yeah.
Is our Zoom working? Zoom.
Yeah.
Okay,
You want to make the screen vertical so they can see the panel?
Oh, no, I can't do. Computer up there, turn.
so
But check this,
Problem.
but move on and what he can check whether there's any instruction, any questions.
All I can do is flip from, all you're seeing is the presentation.
Okay.
That was
I-
put together on PowerPoint.
for this, I felt, who wants to see these guys?
Yeah, great.
They can hear their voices
I don't want to see that.
Continue.
and they can see the slides. All right, Dick Freilich couldn't be here today, but he sent me a whole lot of stuff. And I went to his house, last time I was there operating, I took some pictures. My photo method there was no method. I started taking a few at John's, then I went to Dick's and I think I took more. And by the time I got to Matt's, I kind of had this concept of how I was going to do this and they got better. So I apologize for that. In some cases, there aren't as many and they're not as good. And you'll see that when we get to John's layout. I don't have enough. All right, so Dick Freilich, HO scale. He's got two railroads up there. It's kind of interesting. New Haven in the 60s, and then the Connecticut Central is in the modern era. So that's kind of off of a branch. Dual level, and I'll show you pictures of that. So staging is on the lower level. So the lower level represents Boston, and then there's also some areas for Providence, Rhode Island, at one end of the staging, and the other end is New York.
Yep.
And correct me if I'm wrong, because
No,
you
you're
guys
right,
know
right.
this much better.
He's gonna add another, you'll get to it, but he's gonna add a larger staging area. So right now that's one of the key things you'll learn about heat staging. So he's got some.
Plenty of stage.
Yeah, you last stage. So he set up some temporary staging. My staging moved. I've had it in 4 different locations since I developed my railroad. I've had staging where the port is now underneath the cellar stairs, staging once. Where that South Richmond area was in mine, that was staging once. And then I finally got smart to build a separate staging area so that I wouldn't do that again. Hopefully.
Okay, same kind of dispatcher, no radios, no telephones, manually controlled switches. He has a master train list and then he has train cards. So this is his layout. You can see the lower level there. There's a double track helix. So the tracks on the lower level to the left are Boston. And that little white strip is a station at Providence. And then on the right, then it comes through and it goes around and on the right side, it becomes New York. So trains start in Boston. They move up to Helix, and the Helix is where the 6 2x4s are sticking up. They come up here and they come up on this track it's the center track at the bottom right side for the people that are listening. So they come out on that track, go past the yard, and I couldn't. Is there?
In reality, they can come up and down either one of those tracks.
Right.
Okay, but
Track helix.
the way I've seen it run, that's the way it is.
Yeah.
What's the name of the yard? I could
Cedar Hill.
Cedar Hill. All right, I could not think of that. So this is the main yard, Cedar Hill. The main line is at the edge of the table. It comes around, makes a curve around the end of the peninsula. Fairhaven is the small depot, actually just a platform on the left. What's the name of this industry here? Or is this New Haven in switching or something?
Maybe just past the part of the further down the end. He calls that little switching area against the backdrop Fairhaven.
Fairhaven, okay. So you continue through Fairhaven. You come out on the upper level here. Passenger trains go and stop at the station. There's some stub tracks for RDCs, local passengers.
Commuter.
Then if you continue out, you're back to the Helix, and now you're on the upper of the 3 tracks here. And typically that would take you down to New York City.
Right. Or you come out the branch line, which is the track closest to you is the branch line. that goes
Right.
to the branch.
So from the yard, typically, trains come and they operate, they go through the turnout at the bottom, and they're on the lowest track, which is the branch line, which goes around the branch line. And hidden behind 3 2x4s on the left is Wallingford, right? And from there, it's a Y. You can go left, and you head down to the Connecticut Central. You can go right and you go through Morgantown and Springfield Yard. So I have this is the end of the line on the Connecticut Central, Plainville. Here's a bunch of the switching areas on the Connecticut Central. There's a engine yard. This is Highland. Now this is
No,
back,
That's down in Plainville.
that's. What's this?
That's down in Plainville, when you go around. It's Highland. Check out the Y, that's the Y right there.
This is the
Oh,
one,
yeah,
okay,
my mistake. Looked like the building down the corner. Yep.
okay, and if you keep coming to the lower right, you end up on the upper tracks here, and there's industrial switching there. If you head to Morgantown, there's industrial switching there, train station, and then it goes into a small staging yard, which is Springfield. So that's kind of Dick's layout in a nutshell. He has a train list of all
When he
the,
runs this train list, he pretty much runs it, that's kind of like a schedule. It's not timed, but it's a sequence. So in the passenger trains, he runs his passenger trains in a sequence to make them all work. So as you can see, there's quite a few passenger trains that he runs on it. And the freight trains are as they're available.
so here's the freight trains. And I didn't know what that WSCH.
West Springfield to Cedar Hill.
Oh, okay. So these are and then it just says Connecticut Central on duty. So are those crews not, the Connecticut Central trains not in this list?
So Connecticut Central, they're switched. So the first thing the Connecticut Central crew does, that was on the wall, on the little shelf portion of it, is they come in and they do all their pulls. They get all their outbound cars. So the Connecticut Central comes on duty and he'll pull all his outbound cars, and then he'll go over to the Cedar Hill Yard, drop those off, interchange with the Cedar Hill Yard. The Cedar Hill Yard will build the return cars for Connecticut Central. So that's why it's written like that.
Okay. So this is samples of his train cards. I don't know if the color code means something or not. Okay. So he's got a work extra, he's got a passenger train. And then the green card actually has the out in the back new on it.
That's good.
Here's some more, train 101, train 102. He's got some of the RDCs, for instance. 2 of them will come together from different directions. They'll connect up and then go on to New Haven, as a set.
Correct.
The switching, here's an example of switching for freight. I guess when you're the yard master, you're filling this out
Right,
as you build the train.
so basically when a mainline freight comes into Cedar Hill and dumps off the car cars, he has a list of what industries take what type of car. And so there's like 4 destinations, so there's 4 tracks we spot cars on, depending on the train that's going on. So at this point, we don't really care about what box car goes. I can put a 40-foot box car on any one of those tracks. And a 50-foot reefer here on. So when I make up the train to go to the destinations, then we go into like the detail of it. So I'll pull all those cars for this job, we'll say are on track 4. So I'll pull them off, and if he needs a box, you see it says it needs a 40-foot box car. Well, on that track, I have that B&O car. So I fill in that, and that gives the operator a little bit more detail when he gets there, that he just can't dump any box car on any track. It's a little bit more
Scripted.
Right. Dick does the pulls. He makes these sheets up every time. So on here, I filled out the top ones. I pulled the cars off the track and assigned them to the destination up there and filled in the reporting marks. Prior to the session, he goes and he does the pulls and types them in. So they're gonna spot one, and those are the ones they're gonna pick up.
So this card will be redone for the next.
Yes,
Okay,
each individual session.
but the passenger trains, there's no need for any of that. So
No,
it's
correct,
just the,
correct.
what is it,
Yeah.
four freight locals that
Yeah,
you do something that.
basically. Yeah, well, you got the TOFC car, you got the potato train, you got a few others, but as far as the freights is like.
Okay. And then these are more passenger trains?
Yep.
And then this is the Connecticut Central. Now on the left is the switch list for the operator, and I believe on the right, that is the list you're talking about
Yeah.
that tells you what kind of car goes in which industry.
Yeah.
And then eventually that would get filled in.
You'll find a car, you would, the yard guy would find a car to fit that description.
Correct.
And fill it in.
And that's it for Dick's. So
Who's this
any
guy?
questions on that? These guys can probably answer. So then we get to John's. Bangor and Rustic and Maine Central. N scale 1960s, right? Kind of close enough.
Yeah.
Triple level.
Oh.
I got equipment that goes from 50 to 80, but mid-60s is my preferred.
Okay, no fast clock. Dispatcher without radios or telephones, however, the dispatcher operates, is it Trains Inc? It was Trains something, the software.
What's Railroad and Company?
Railroad and Company, okay, wrong name. Railroad and Company software runs the whole layout. So he's got a dual computer screen showing the entire layout. Every single turnout is controlled by the computer,
They're all by Tortoise.
all by
Yeah.
Tortoise. And then for the local panels, the dispatcher can release them when a train goes there and they have to do local work. The rest of the time, he's got a control, so, if he's running a through train through there, he's not risking
Panels locked out.
getting, a problem. So John uses train lists and train cards. And, he does it different than the other guys, and we'll get to that. So this is what I call the front aisle. Basically, you can't see Pete's head there. It's behind that little talking
Yeah.
cage. But you come into the room there and the aisle's a big U shape. So, John, you could tell me, this is what Waterville Yard
Yeah, that's Waterville Yard.
on the lower level on the left. And what's up above?
Oh, there's a bunch there. The tail end of Northern Main Junction comes from the left onto the railroad. You see the tall station building. And it goes up, makes a big loop around, and inside the loop is the town of Milo. And it goes across the backdrop and then goes all the way around the rest of the room. It's 3 levels. In this view, there's only 2 because there's not 3 levels here, but the rest of it's all 3 levels.
So you can just see one of the levels on the right side across the aisle.
Yeah, that's the paper mill at Millinocket on the mid-level. Top is one. Middle.
So this is a little further up still on the left side of that entry aisle. Now, one thing, he designates the 2 different railroads by different colors, right?
Correct. All the control panels for the middle level and the upper level are up on the top. Because if you had the panels on the middle level and you just bumped up against them, you'd push buttons and you'd be throwing turnouts all over the place. So I put them all on the upper level, so if you can see there's yellow tape and white tape there, all the panels with white tape would be for the Bangor and Aroostook, which is on the upper deck. And the main central panels would have all yellow tape on them, which goes on the bottom deck. You might find a better view at some point.
So unfortunately, I didn't get North Main Junction, a photo of it.
The highlight of the.
I failed.
I tell you. It's all right. That's the Great Northern Mill at Millinocket, Maine.
So this is the middle level on the right side.
Yes.
And I know Searsport's up above it.
Yep.
Which goes down the end and off to the right around the corner.
And then the very bottom is the lower level, which is Brunswick. When you come out of staging and first town you come into is Brunswick, you can't see much of it.
This is the North Main Junction Yard entrance.
No, this is coming out of Waterville.
It's down below, middle level,
Oh, I'm on the middle level. Okay.
Waterville
middle level.
goes around like this, and then the railroad goes up and down the same peninsula, so that train with the caboose is gonna go all the way down and come into Waterville Yard, and then it's gonna leave going out those 3 tracks and head up to, that shows all 3 levels.
So
there.
this is the back aisle, and I got a better shot here, showing 3 levels on both sides. And the last time I was there operating, one of the trains ended up, it's called the Caribou Turn, and Caribou is right up here on this top level, and we're gonna talk a little more about that. So this is one view of Caribou. The Caribou's long enough that I couldn't get it all in. And the tracks are numbered from left to right.
Yep.
Every track has a number, and if you look at, let me jump ahead
There
here.
we go.
Here's the panel that goes with Caribou. So the turnout control is set up to set up a whole route. You don't change each turnout individually. For instance, if you want to have, right now it's showing this is through track 2. So if you pulled in here, you would come in, you would go to track 2. If you kept going, you'd go out.
Correct.
So that makes things simpler. Let's back up. So
Sometimes.
there's about, I think about 20 cars get spotted when you do the Caribou Turn. But let me back up.
Up to,
Yeah, usually usually try to limit 24 is probably the max we'll send up there. We really want to torture somebody.
So this train, Caribou Turn on the bar. It starts out from North Main. Wrong button. Starts out from North Main Junction, comes to a town of Packard. This car is telling me that I'm setting off 4 on track 4.
Yep.
In this case, I'm not picking anything up.
yeah, nothing ever gets picked up on the trip north. So off to the right, you can see it takes reefers or insulated boxcars or pulp racks. So it's the only types of cars that go there, and those would be empties.
And the train would be blocked, but they would be on the head end pin.
They'd be on the head pin.
And you have sheets for giving you directions for
How to
blocking all
build
the
it,
trains.
how to block it, correct?
It is actually the most complicated one to build.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay. So next you basically, if you think about it, if you think of this layout as a big U, you start out North Main Junction, which is at the top, the crossbar of the U. You come down on the top level, then you loop around, you cross in the back, right? And then you swing all the way around on the far side of the back aisle, and then you loop back up to Caribou. Learned. I learned. So after you've switched in Packard, you come back across behind North Main Junction Yard. You come around the corner and there's Washburn, and it's got everything gets set out on track 3, and it looks like it can take a whole lot of different
Yeah, on
cars.
the right. And then the yard guy fills in what's actually going there, like in this trip, it's only 3 boxcars are going there. So that wet erases off, and then when Matt makes the train up and builds the train, he fills in with a marker of what he put in the train and where it's going. And then what the pickup, left is the set off, right column is the pickups.
Yeah, all these sheets are laminated sheets which we write on with dry erase marker. And so you can write on the number, and then you can just take a wet wipe and wipe it all down and reuse it.
And they're on a lanyard. It's great. You just put it on your neck and you got your throttle and off you go. So you come to Caribou, and this is where it gets more complicated. And you have to, this is where you gotta sit and think about, do you want to get done in an hour or 3 hours? And there's a lot to switch. This is where the track numbering system comes in, and you see there's tracks 1 through 8. If you go back to the panel, you can see them all. And this is like you said, it's one of the most complicated ones. This is a fun job to do. And many of the tracks will have Let's go back up. Oh, wrong way. So for instance, back on track 5, this is potato houses, right?
Potato houses will go against that wall, eventually it'll be 10 doors.
So 10 doors, 10 cars down on where it comes into track 4. There's a spot for 2 salt hoppers,
2 salts, 2 grains,
2 grains. Down at this end, this is petrol,
propane and oil car.
propane and oil, refrigerator cars here. And if you take this track down, well, actually, I think it comes back to track 2.
Yeah,
Track 2 continues, and that's where there's
pick up the pulp racks.
the pulp racks.
And the cars that sit on track 2, we make them leave. The railroad ends going north here. When we set off cars on track 2, because of the railroad really did continue, we set them off there like they go out on a local. They just sit there for a session and then get picked up. Like those coal cars, those would be going up to Loring Air Force Base, which is right up the road from there. And
Right, we'll take the loads out of it, like they go up full, so then we'll take the loads out of them, so that when the guy's picking them up, bring them back, they're empty. We try to keep, visible loads, we try to change them out so that it looks at least some realistic.
So, and also, these 4 cars are spotted on track 4. And they will eventually go into track 5.
those 4 on track 4 are empties. Everything on track 5 gets loaded, so they'll bring up empties with them, they'll pull some loads and they'll set the empties over. It's the next trip.
So they're basically all spots where you are sitting in the yard.
And that's all I have for John's, and,
So I chose not to do road names or car numbers. I have about 600 cars on the layout, and I don't want to deal with road numbers and road names and flipping bills 4 times and all that. So you just, if it says the legal box car in a business, you leave a box car. If it takes a tank car, spot a tank car. If it takes a hopper, you spot a hopper.
and I thought about this, and putting this together, that car cards would be a mess on this layout.
It would be a thing.
Because even you got 600 cars, some, a bunch are unit trains, so maybe you only have 450 car cards you got to deal with.
And there's-
You got to have pockets
pockets.
pockets everywhere.
There's a 10 track staging yard down the bottom that has 10 trains in it with about 25 cars in a train. And it's staging all the time.
And when things get going, there's typically 6 people in this aisle
Yeah,
working on both sides at the same time.
it can be kind of crazy.
So I honestly think, you got the right system. You got a simple car card you take with it and it works.
Right, so there's 2 things you got, so he's got the, 10 track, you said staging yard.
Yeah,
So the staging yard, it has a loop in the end, so it loops back around, so it's reverse loop. So when you go into the staging yard, the train goes in, goes around the loop, comes back and comes into one of those 10 tracks. So it's basically ready to go for the next time out, and it's ready to go. He doesn't have to do anything in the staging yard to do anything, the train's ready to go.
it takes at least 4 sessions to cycle all those trains in and out of the staging yard. Probably takes 3 out a night on a good night. So you won't see those same cars for first one in, the last one is basically a month and a half before that train comes out of that, maybe 2 months. So you won't see those cars on the railroad for quite some time.
Right. The other thing you didn't have, we don't have a picture of, but so for when those trains come out of stage and they get to a yard, basically Northern Main Junction, he's got I call it a matrix where it says, okay, if you have a box car, it can either go to Milo or it can go here or it can go there. And so the yard guy just picks one of those locations to put it in. And the yard guy then balances the railroad so that all the box cars, you don't get too many box cars going to one and not enough to another. The yard guy can then balance it so it doesn't become overly, too many for one and not enough for another. So that's kind of a yard
Out
guy.
of that yard card we use, huh?
No,
Yeah.
No, I
It's
didn't get
a tough one. But since you didn't have road numbers or numbers to decide, that's how you decide where the cars go.
so that's all we have for this. So questions? I mean, you guys been asking them all along.
Come on, give him a stumping question. Come on. I want to get to the bottom of the top.
We have a question.
So John,
45-minute round trip.
John, Matt, and Bruce, thank you.
No, we have a question in the back. We'll get a question.
That's a really basic question, John. How do the trains literally get up to the second level?
There's a helix.
Or is there,
There's a helix.
okay.
It's actually,
I missed that
there's,
photo.
I don't know if there's a picture of where the helix is. But yeah, it's all connected. So you come out of the bottom, you go up, you come out, you run all the way around the middle. Then you go up, run to the top.
So it's two helixes stacked one on top of the other, right?
Yeah.
And then one of the other helix, one of the top helix is actually double track because it comes back down to the mill.
It's a branch line down to the middle of the
He tried to keep all the Bangor to Roostic up the top level, but he didn't have enough room to get model that mill, so he had to take some of the middle level to go do that.
Yeah, the middle rocket mill's about 16 inches wide, and 14 feet long. That's a good switching puzzle too.
It's kind of a picture in the right there, but
Yeah.
yeah, that's hard to say.